Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, as you can tell by the title, we'll be talking about a very large winter storm that is most likely going to be coming into the United States as early as the next 24 to 48, 24 hours across the Northwest. Now this thing is going to be a massive cross-country beast. I mean, its impacts are going to be stretching from Washington State, in the extreme northwestern United States, all the way to the northeast and extreme, Maine area, and everywhere in between. This thing is gonna be quite a legendary storm. It's gonna probably take a week for it to go through the whole United States. It's not gonna be quick moving. It's gonna create tons of impacts. There are still a lot of details, a lot of uncertainties about it. There is a threat for severe weather. I mean, every area, pretty much every inch of the United States is going to be impacted by this system in one way or another, and I just want to show you it because there's just so much to talk about. It's quite frankly something that doesn't happen really that often. You see these type of systems maybe occurring 1 to 3 times at a maximum per holiday, per winter season, and this time it is occurring in the holiday season time frame. So do note right now we do already have an active pattern. We do have many things going on. We have a little system that is spitting away right now across the central United States. You can see the areas of advisories that it will cause, and you can see that there's some even winter storm warnings. Some areas could get over 6, maybe even 8 inches of snowfall. Again, some of these snowfall rates are really heavy. I was looking at some webcams here. Really incredible snowfall rates, and this will obviously continue. That's not the big storm we're talking about. Neither even is this thing that's moving in right now. That's kind of the precursor to the main system. You can see across Seattle some snow showers, just north and east actually. Across northeastern Washington and the Idaho Panhandle, we have a lot of snow going on. Again, really nothing compared to what's gonna come. And you can see we already have winter storm watches in effect for that big system for you can see Saturday through Sunday. So that's when the big system will be impacting the Northwest. And with that, let's start talking about the Northwest, because boy do we have a lot of things to talk about, and I don't really want to extend this video longer than it should be. Okay, and that's what's going to make this video hard. There's so many things to talk about in every given region. I love talking, if you can't tell. Making this short is going to be, making this a short video, relatively speaking, is going to be hard. Notice, right now, the Northwest, you are dealing with showers and precipitation. This is really going to stay confined, though, to the Washington, Oregon, California area. Not really anything else. Do note that the eastern sections of the Northwest aren't really dealing with much, so that's going to continue to be the trend with this wave. And you can see that it does peter out once it crosses the, the Bitterroots and into the Grand Tetons. It's a measly little event, and it dies off. However, what catches the eye is obviously this monster, which you can't even see on a radar right now. Looking, if you were to look at one that is pointing almost, several hundred miles off the shore, it's going to be quick moving in, but once it hits the Northwest, it will take its sweet old time. And notice, there it is. There's that moisture. It's pretty strong, 980. That's a relatively strong system. Has quite a bit of strong winds with it. Notice that gradient picks up, so we have some pretty intense rainfall rates that eventually do convert into snow once it hits the cold areas. And yes, California is going to get ridiculous amounts of snow. They're forecasting, forget this, 3 to 5 feet of snow, especially towards the central and southern areas. So, the Sierra are already running, and actually much of the Northwest and just really the western United States snowpack is already much above their historical average. So this is just going to add to that. And notice that by Saturday, we have this system producing a lot of snow, a lot of rain. The Northwest gets kind of avoided for now. You can see in Northwest, I mean Montana, Wyoming, because Washington and Oregon will get a lot of rainfall out of this. Same thing with even British Columbia. You can see right there getting in on that. And the temperatures are going to be relatively cold. So if you look at the 2-meter temperature anomaly, it's not as cold as it was a few weeks ago, but there could be some much more low-lying areas that typically wouldn't see as snow fall with events like this might actually get into that, because again, it's colder than it should be. So notice this thing starts barreling towards the south, and that's what makes it such a slow mover. It kind of transports itself into a different storm. And I want to go back actually to the Northwest, and let me just play this out for you. Notice by Sunday, this thing's mainly done for Washington, Oregon, but you can see some snow now starting to push through Montana, Idaho, and into Wyoming. So again, it may seem that at first that these areas won't get anything, but you can see by by Monday, Tuesday, once the system moves out into the plains, it really starts picking up snow, especially across Wyoming, across northern Colorado. So those areas still are looking to get quite a bit of snowfall. And obviously across the plains, this thing turns into, let's just say it turns into a monster. So as I click on the total snowfall, again, because the northwestern United States is the first area that's going to get impacted by this system, there's the greatest confidence for this area. So I'm just going to show you the GFS, playing through the GFS. I'll show you the European snowfall amounts. Notice the GFS shows some pretty ridiculous amounts, especially towards California. Across Oregon and Washington, more feasible, something you'd see more typically with a large system, but California really gets the brunt of this. The European model taking it through, again, 114 hours when this thing is still spinning, beginning to spin across the central United States. I want to show you some of these snowfall amounts for the northwestern United States, and do note total snowfall, assuming a 10-to-1 ratio. Yeah, we have a lot of snow across Washington. We have a lot of snow across Oregon, and you can see, again, it's not just the highest mountains. A lot of that snow bleeds through past the Cascades and these towering areas, so because of how it's going to be funneling a lot of the moisture from the south, not just straight from the west. And then again, California really getting on some of those snowfall amounts. Again, a lot of these are underrepresented because this is assuming a 10-to-1 ratio, which is a bit more sloppier and wetter than it actually will be. Let's move on now into the southwestern United States. I know I have folks that are watching from there. Boy, oh boy, you guys are going to be in. Not even, starting from that system. You can see that today we already have activity that are going on across the northern Sierra, 6 to 12, maybe even 18 inches in some areas with that snowfall event. So that's something to watch for. And do note that as I put this forward, we don't really see a big break. And by Saturday, late Friday, early Saturday, we see that thing moving in. Lots of rain, lots of snow. Sierra getting absolutely pounded. Look at those snowfall rates, right? And this continues for a while, all through Saturday into Sunday, and then even Sunday into Monday night. The last piece of this going through. Again, this starts spreading into the Wasatch, into northern Arizona. Again, it seems as if northern Arizona and New Mexico may not get as heavy snowfall as, obviously, say, California or Nevada. Still, though, it's going to help some of those snowfall, amounts across the mountains catch up because they are below average, and that's only really the few areas across the west that have quite some measly snow cover, which is Arizona and New Mexico, and you can see that will help out, obviously. Notice by the time it reaches Colorado, Wyoming, it starts slowing down, and that's when the system starts intensifying, so that's where we could see some prolonged periods of light to moderate snow, obviously even heavy in some areas. So let me just take this through 160 hours. As you can see, this could be hanging around that snowfall all the way through Friday. That's what makes the system so special. It's so slow moving once it reaches the central United States. It's extreme. Usually you'd see it being slow across the northwest, maybe just the west through the mountains, but once it hits the central United States, it speeds off. Not this thing. This thing is going to be a lot more slower, which is going to make its impacts a lot more amplified. And even if it was a fast-moving system, the things it's going to bring are, going to be a forecaster's kind of nightmare in terms of predicting that accurately. Okay, let's take a look at the snowfall amounts. Again, first off, obviously what catches the eyes is the Sierra. All three sections, northern, southern, central, really good amounts of snow, probably 60 inches plus in some areas. Do notice Nevada picking up a lot, Utah, again, Wyoming also, especially the eastern areas, could be picking up a lot. Colorado, especially the northern and western areas, even though, again, you could see into Arizona, New Mexico, so pretty plentiful. European, I showed you, I was showing this to the folks that were living across the Northwest. If you watched the previous segment and you're still watching, well, then you could see, again, similar amounts to what the GFS is showing. I would say some of these are underdone because it will be a fluffier snow in the mountains. And the the 10-to-1 ratio assumes 10 inches to 1 inch of rain, and realistically, you could double some of these. So again, the water content won't change, but the amount of fluffiness, kind of, snowfall you'll see does. Okay, let's take a glance now across the north-central United States, because this is where that system is going to be really tricky to predict and really hard to forecast. So let's start off with the GFS. Again, right now we do have a system already going on. That's going to be quite impactful for you. You can see southern Wisconsin, northern Iowa, pretty much where we saw those winter weather advisories and those few warnings. Again, especially in the warning areas, there could be quite a bit of snowfall, 3 to 7 inches, if not more. Again, I would not be surprised. The rates of this are really impressive. This little guy right here that is occurring right now. So, if you live across this area, for the most part, you're probably, if you live in Minnesota, northern Minnesota, you're not going to be impacted by this. But northern Iowa, Sioux City, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Wisconsin, Illinois, You can see some very, 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 very heavy snowfall right there, transitioning over from rain. Again, yeah, these are some pretty ridiculous amounts of snow that are falling, and I saw webcam, again, very, very, very low visibility. Okay, moving forward, though, this thing passes through, and I don't really want to focus on it that much more, because notice that we could see a little in-between system on Saturday and Sunday across the northern United States, bringing a little bit of snow for maybe Duluth, maybe Marquette, Michigan, a little bit of showers towards the south. Again, this is going to be nothing compared to what's coming. Get ready. You can see the low pressure starting to come out here. Very strong winds from the south. So the first noticeable change you'll see, especially further west across Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, is the very, very strong winds from the south and a pumping load of very, very warm air. Actually, let me show you this, because this is quite incredible. This is every time you have a big storm, something like this occurs. Notice we have temperatures in the 40s, 50s, all the way potentially into Nebraska. And again, the way this system forms is interesting. Yeah, it's definitely unique. So let me play this through and just show you that finally. So there's those strong winds. You can see that gradient building, right? That's why they're so packed. The winds strengthen. There we have that first precipitation. You can see exploding, and right away across the Dakotas, the panhandle of Nebraska, kind of blizzard alley, getting in on the worst of this very heavy snowfall. It may look like if this thing's going to wrap out, you know, often we see low pressures like this form, right? Blizzard, and then they shear out. That cold front becomes almost vertical, and then that's over. Not this thing. This thing, you can see very heavy rain, even thunderstorms across the northern central areas like of Illinois, Indiana, especially further south into Missouri. Do note, this thing continues pumping moisture into that cold air. So Minneapolis could see some quite significant snow depending on the exact track of this. Again, the details are a bit fuzzy here, but look how long lasting this is. Normally you'd see a system like this kind of move out of here relatively quickly, 12 to 24 hours. Not this thing. This thing's going to be slow moving, redeveloping, developing several times, bringing snow across areas that first we'll see rain. Then you can see obviously a lot of cold air behind it from that northerly flow. By the time things are all said and done, the total snowfall amounts could be pretty ridiculous according to the GFS. Many areas potentially, and honestly, if a system like this were to occur, you know, as the GFS is showing, I would not be surprised to see more widespread amounts, over 2 feet of snow. So yes, pretty incredible if that were to occur. Now, there is some disagreement. The European shows less snow still, something that's very impressive. Let me show you first, though, the rainfall that could fall across the southern areas. Again, so even if Illinois, you know, you don't really, Chicago area, you're not going to be seeing a lot of rain or snow from this. You could still expect, I mean, half an inch, maybe even 2 inches of rain, especially if you get some, you know, thunderstorms, which, yes, is going to be very possible with this system, as it's going to have the dynamics of more of a fall storm rather than a winter storm. In terms of the Chicago area placement, it's going to bring a lot of warm air in here, relatively speaking. European model, total snowfall amounts. Let me just click, you know, once this storm system said and done. Again, I said it's slightly less, but you could still see the vast, there's many areas that are well over 1.5 feet, and has many states that are even, you know, over 6 inches plus. All of Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota, even Wisconsin. So, and again, yeah, so a lot of snow. Again, there are some differences. The European takes this storm on a slightly different perspective, still similar in terms of its magnitude and veracity. There it is across the southwest, northwest, right? And again, once it moves off into the north central plains, it begins that first kind of invasion of snow. Then that second plummeting into potentially more of Wisconsin, Michigan. You can see right there some very heavy snowfall rates. And more distinctly, though, the GFS kind of pulls some of that snow around. While the European doesn't do that as much, so it limits some of the amounts maybe across Minnesota or eastern South Dakota, eastern North Dakota. Again, it's still too early to be making such details, but notice at this point, it's the same system, and we're talking about, you know, 200 hours plus, and it's still affecting the northeasters. Now, let's go to the south central United States. Oh boy, this is probably the area that I'm most concerned about. There's a lot of, you know, a very good threat for severe weather here. Notice the next few days, areas of showers, areas of storms, kind of what we've been seeing the last few days. Nothing too incredible, kind of seasonable weather. It's not going to be too cold, not too warm. You can see maybe a few areas of where some rumbly, nasty storms could occur on Sunday as we go into Monday. But really where things start changing is on Monday, late Monday. You can see obviously snow starting to show across the southwest into New Mexico, Arizona. With that southerly flow, we quickly see this low pressure pick up a lot of moisture, and this is where the first day of severe weather could occur, late Monday and into Tuesday, right here. This may not look significant, but this is where we could see some nasty severe weather. If you look at the Storm Prediction Center on Monday, you can see the severe weather they have is across Oklahoma and Arkansas, and that's exactly what this thing is this thing is showing. Oklahoma and Arkansas, Oklahoma and Texas, sorry. I don't know why I said that. And then into Tuesday, especially during the day, this is where things also get very concerning further eastward and also southernward, you know, more across Kansas, Missouri, maybe into Louisiana, Texas. Another day of severe weather. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do the same thing for Wednesday and Thursday because, well, this thing continues. So, you know, for you guys, this is going to be mainly rain, even for Kansas. Maybe the extreme northwestern portion of Kansas gets in on some of that snow. Again, assuming the GFS model has a good prediction and handling of this system, which honestly, looking at what the other models are showing, I would say they are in relative agreement. So that's one thing that we have with this system. That's kind of the saving grace, that the models are in relative agreement. So it's not going to be an out of nowhere massive one. We're going to see this thing coming from a mile away, which is why I'm making videos already about it now. Behind this system, you will get a very nice cold blast of air. It will be noticeably colder. Obviously, the total amount of rainfall that will fall is going to be, well, let's just put it, pretty significant, especially across Tennessee, northern Mississippi, and Alabama. Again, not all of this is from that system, as you saw through Sunday. Even, you know, this upcoming weekend, you could see some rain. But unfortunately, areas like the panhandle of Texas, Oklahoma, you need that rain, you need that precip. It may look like if you guys may not really get much out of this, so that's something also to note. I do want to mention, for the folks that like the long-range outlook part, behind this system, there's a lot of cold air left in place, right, as I mentioned. And towards Christmas time, there looks a growing chance that there could be some sort of a southern slider, maybe some snow occurring here. Again, it's something we have to watch very, very closely. The pattern does not look any less quieter. Look at that in the long range and it does in the short range. Some nasty storms. So, yeah, the south central United States, you know, with regards to this system, rain on and off, you know, some areas of showers through this upcoming Monday. But then on Monday and on Tuesday, we see that really big threat, especially for severe weather across Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas. The Storm Prediction Center on Monday, I showed you, looks like that, right? A slight risk already several days out. This is probably going to get upgraded to at least an enhanced. And then you could see on Tuesday, it affects a larger area. Again, I would not be surprised to see a moderate. A high is not out of the question either. Okay, let's move on to the Northeast. And let me show you what the Northeast is going to be getting out of this system. So a lot of activity for the Northeast. In the short term, you can see a little bit of chilly air towards the north. This system that we have across the Midwest really won't result into anything. It'll kind of die off before it has a chance to make anything of it. But that intermediary system that I was talking about earlier, well, you guys, if you're watching just the Northeast section, you wouldn't know because I was talking about this in the North Central United States section. But there's a little system that could develop. It's going to be pretty weak across the Midwest, but once it reaches the Northeast, it could intensify, produce some pretty, even decent pockets of snowfall across New Hampshire, Vermont, upstate New York, Massachusetts, maybe Boston picking up a little bit. There is some signs that this could try to develop off the East Coast here. There's some models showing that earlier. It doesn't look like it will do that now, so that is definitely something I want to address. So again, even, you know, through this upcoming next few days, there's going to be activity. Behind that little clipper system, there will be quite a bit of cold air that moves in. You can see as kind of some backwash precipitation falls from a separate system up across the North Atlantic. We see actually pretty darn cold air. So that sets the stage from this moisture that's going to be moving in from this massive behemoth of a storm that I'm talking about. A lot of that will be falling as snow initially, Pennsylvania, New York. And you can see the GFS kind of develops a new low pressure here. Again, the coastal areas, you will get that cold air kind of swept away. You're just too close to the ocean with such strong winds. You know, you'll be kept above freezing, but upstate New York, Massachusetts, especially, you know, my southern Canadian areas, I'm assuming the Northeast section is also watched by southeastern Canada. I should include that, and I will from now on. I kind of forgot about that the last few days, but you can see Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, Quebec, all those cities lined up here where vast majority of Canadians live on, you know, the eastern side of Canada. You're going to be seeing some very heavy snow out of this as well, assuming the GFS is right. And again, how slow this system's moving. By the time we're talking about the Northeast section, it's 210 hours out versus the Southwestern section where this thing is 48 hours out. Right? So this thing, again, a lot of impacts from coast to coast, and a lot of cold air is going to be left in the wake of this system. A lot of cold air, and that sets the stage for potentially another system later on that could come in as a much more snowier system, as you saw right there, and then another one, again, that one you could see a little bit more of a rain mix as well, but definitely no shortage of interesting weather here. Let's take a look at that total snowfall at around this time frame. Again, if that cold air were to be there and that precipitation, that moisture shoves in, we could see some very healthy amounts across upstate New York, even Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh. You're right on the cusp of that, so we'd have to watch that carefully. And again, total rainfall for the areas that don't see that Snow also pretty significant across the coast, and even you could see that snowfall equivalent of rain. That's quite a bit of snow. That's quite a bit of snow. That's going to be some heavy snow. All right, southeast, last section. Let's go. The southeastern United States. Well, I'm showing you the precipitation amounts. Might as well show you those. Might as well show you those now, since I already have it pulled up. There's the GFS. I think it has a pretty good handle of what's going on. Probably equally as a European, if not more. And you could see Tennessee, especially the next few, the next week could see a lot of rain. Again, not all of that will be falling from the system that the video's title on. As you can see, there's already activity on across those areas going on right now and will be into the weekend. But that will move away, and again, nothing really too concerning about that. Warm air is left in its wake. We see a southerly flow, and we see that strong cold front of the system move through. Obviously, the western areas of this section are Arkansas, Missouri, Louisiana. You're going to be impacted by this earlier, Tuesday, Wednesday. But this cold front's not going to be screaming and racing through. This thing's going to be pretty slow moving. Notice that through the next day and a half, this thing kind of moved through the southeast, so lugs through it. Quite a bit of moisture and rainfall. The severe weather threat doesn't look too high here, but don't be surprised to see a slight or an enhanced across these areas, at least, because the dynamics aren't as good as they will be across Oklahoma and Texas, though they still will be. And notice, behind this system, there could be a lot of cold air that moves in, relatively speaking, and you can see the 2-meter temperature anomaly. It's going to feel like Christmas. It's going to feel like December, all right? And if you were to take a look at the total rainfall from this, again, rather significant. I want to show you the European model now, because the European does a slightly different handling, but again, I would say it's remarkably similar, especially given how far the system is out. Again, the biggest severe weather is kind of the risk within the first 2 days of this front developing, but it's still going to be powerful and nasty as it moves through the southeast, and you can see a lot of rainfall, a lot of precipitation. They're slowing down as it chugs through the southeast there, and again, that cold air kind of settles in on the southeast after that system pushes through. In terms of precipitation amounts, pretty significant, very similar to what the GFS was showing. And again, if you do have areas and pockets of storms, and the GFS is showing 3 inches widespread, you could expect that there could be some 6-7 inch amounts locally, if not even more. So that is that. Let's do a quick little overview now, and let's start off with the European model. So I realized I didn't show the European model for the Northeast, so I kind of want to show you that now. I pretty much showed it for every other region, so I do apologize. But do notice there's that system. I mean, looking at this at a U.S. scale, statewide scale, it is impressive. This thing's borderline legendary in terms of how big this thing is and how slow moving it will be. And obviously, it's not historic. We usually, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, see 1 to 3 of these storms per year, but it's going to be one of these systems that you look back and you're going to be like, remember that system across, the northern plains in early December, especially for the folks living across the northern plains. If you end up with 2 feet snow plus, yes, this thing's going to be memorable. And hopefully not horrible. If you don't, if you prepare for it, then you should be fine. But notice in the Northeast, the European also shows you a lot of snowfall, so I wanted to kind of add that, and it actually shows even slower system for those areas. Really takes a long time to drag out of there. And again, a lot of cold air behind this system. The models are also in a very good agreement on that. I already showed you the total precip map from the European model. Let's take a look at the total snowfall map. Again, assuming a 10-to-1 ratio, so it's a bit fallacious. But let's use it anyways. And you can see that, the northern half of the United States will get clobbered, including southeastern Canada, and obviously the west, because it goes pretty far to the south here. Southeast, not yet, not with this system. You could get clobbered with severe weather, so that is something you need to be looking out for, because yes, this is going to be dangerous. You can see some large cities included here, and this is still far out. I'll obviously keep you guys updated. And for now, that's basically all I wanted to show you. Now that I actually think about it, I want to show you the Canadian model. This is a model I haven't showed for any specific region, but I still like using it. So we have a blessing that the European and GFS in a relative agreement. So is a Canadian, though. You can see Canadian shows a massive system moving in across the west, moving through the Rockies, through the Central Plains, into the northern United States. Again, exploding in terms of size, that cold front, very similar characteristics. All the models are actually in really, really good agreement on this system. Doesn't mean that there won't be changes. There definitely will be, because even amongst themselves, the models obviously have a little bit of differences. But for how far out this thing is, especially across the Northeast, they take a very similar track here. And notice the pattern looks active in long range. I've said that many times. Things are looking looking very exciting. One last thing I want to show you is the cold air that can move in behind this, just to help you visualize this 2-meter temperature anomaly for the United States. Again, out ahead of the system, especially towards the south, it will be pretty darn warm. It will definitely not feel like winter across the west. Completely different story with all that, ridiculous amounts of snow that could be falling there. Do note, obviously, once that system moves through, though, it kind of collapses in on itself, and we see some very cold air, especially where we have, feet of snowpack. Yeah, we could see some records being broken, shattered across the northern plains. And just to help you visualize the actual feeling of this, yeah, -19, -20. We'll have temperatures here like they would be in January, late January. Obviously, it's December, so, it's definitely hasn't happened before. But yeah, let's go back to those anomalies. It's also going to be pretty far-reaching. You can see a lot of the south. You're not going to be seeing -19, but you're going to be seeing chillier temperatures. And again, I feel like the coldest of the cold air will be secluded towards the snowpack area and the northwest, as typical with the La Nina pattern. In the long range, though, you can see we have these contrasts, right? The warm, the cold. It's going to give way to some pretty nasty systems, I believe, and the GFS is showing exactly that in the long range there. Like the 24th, a Christmas Day blizzard potentially across these areas. Definitely something we will have to watch for. All right, and there's many systems even in between that we'll have to keep an eye on for. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all on the next episode. See ya. Bye.